Hello, friends. It's Chapo.
I've told you this before, but you've got to express. That's how you get out of depression.
Well, let's get into some of the the broader themes and personalities that you guys have investigated. So, I guess there's a couple large categories of investigation that the manosphere makes their bread on. So let's begin first with we alluded to it a little bit before, but let's the major category of health and fitness. What are some of the advice that is being peddled here? What are some of the contradictions that one encounters when dealing with the manospheres and bro science trademark? What is their advice when it comes to diet, health, and fitness?
Well, that's a really interesting kind of category because Tucker kind of hides away like a huge part of it, which is, like Elliot Hulse, for example. He's like a guy who basically was like a lifter, right? And he was just doing strength fitness. Yeah, he was a YouTube guy. He was a big success on YouTube in the early days of YouTube. And he was basically like, get outside, let's fucking lift tires, it was for the dads of his community or whatever. Like, get outside, get some air, like let's fucking get strong again or whatever. And he was investigating all kinds of like super fucking esoteric shit, right? So he was, doing like Osho meditations, which is that wild country guru guy, and he was really into like William Reich, who's essentially a Marxist who was kind of obsessed with orgasm,
orgone energy, baby.
Yes, that's right.
By the way, for listeners, we are all recording this episode inside orgone boxes.
That's right. We
It's
can't let that go to
accumulating
waste.
like crazy.
If you'd like any of our orgone, please email chapotraphouse.com.
Yeah, that one is actually true.
No, honestly, he was on fire with that shit. Well, I'm right. He didn't have to slay that hard. Seriously, orgone is real. I'm sorry.
And so and he was like reading about Eastern religion and all of this shit. And there's a huge part of that school that stayed in the New Age, which Tucker doesn't want to look at, where there's guys, going, well, actually, the problem is that men can't bond sexually with each other. So they've got to actually literally cross swords.
Let's go.
I'm going to be drinking. There's this guy who I've seen his progression, and now he's doing ritual drinking of his own cum and urine mixed together.
Yeah.
Which obviously is, hopefully you can sell some of that on your website as well. That would be.
Tucker was a coward for not having him on.
I thought it was interesting that Elliot Hulse was on because, I tracked his progression as you did, and he was of that Rich Piana era. And I feel like the day that Rich Piana died, that ended a lot of like lifting or bodybuilding or strength lifting or Olympic lifting as an online presence just for the sake of fitness or the sake of looking big, because Rich Piana certainly wasn't in good health. But like it was, I don't know. I got really into all that shit and exercising a lot in my early 20s, and around 2017 when Rich Piana died, it, like everything else, got tainted by the awful waste of politics, that entire space.
Yeah, Hulse really got into politics, essentially. And even when he was looking for trad religion, he went through a kind of like nationalist MAGA tunnel and was like, okay, well, I want something Western. What is it going to be? And he ends up as a tradcath who like is going to Catholic churches and being like, actually, they're too worldly. Like these Catholics are too Jewish for me. They're too liberal. And so like that's a weird shift, because right before that he is doing, these kind of Reichian kind of like, you got to get in touch with your subconscious by screaming and kind of like shaking and shit and getting all your emotions out or whatever. And after that, he becomes like this really like Stonewall guy, right? Who's like, actually, no. And that's because I think a lot of it has to do with like his dad. His dad was like an immigrant dad, kind of stone face. And the whole time he's like, well, there's something wrong. Like my dad's like not letting out all these emotions. Okay, well, there's actually this like grounding that you can do. You can kind of release it through this, like Reichian lineage that goes into like this bioenergetic therapy and stuff like that. And then finally, like when Trump comes around, he's like, well, wait a second. What if I just satisfied my dad? It's like full circle. It's like, what if I actually just became a good boy and satisfied my fucking father and became a good Catholic man, who's fighting for like Western values or whatever. So it's actually really fucking kind of convenient to end up there after all the exploration. And he was like a Baha'i faith, like universalist and shit for a little while. And but of course, like his idea of religion is also a fantasy. There is no actual. That's why he's so frustrated with all the Catholic churches he goes to with his wife. Because it's like,
Well,
fuck, none of these people are talking about like the phalanx of manliness that we're gonna form and like kill the lefties with.
All the stuff before that, that he was doing, and all the stuff that a lot of these guys were getting into around that time, sort of right before Trump, it was very like 1970s human development movement, like.
Yes.
Almost supernatural shit. This like goofy shit that people believed in the 70s, and it's the root of a lot of like weird cults like Nexium. This idea that if you get good enough at thinking, you'll be able to like levitate and kill sicknesses in your body and fucking live forever.
Excellent shit.
Yeah, and obviously like that's such an appealing thought, especially if you get into really good shape. If you go through that whole journey, it's very edifying and great and satisfying. But if you do that and you're also a very suggestible person, you don't just like give that up when you become a tradcath. You obviously still think like, if I go to the right church, I'll like have the fucking powers of prophecy. I'll have Samson's power. As if they don't do any of this fucking Vatican II shit, I'll have these powers that I thought I could have when I was studying this 70s esoteric bullshit.
Okay, so here's the thing I want to talk about in terms of diet and health. It's like, okay, like in terms of like food as culture war. Look, steak, that's always going to be for the fellas. Salad, gross. That's for women. Don't like it. Get it out of here. What I want to know though is how is that classic, like, sort of American red meat hamburger kind of thing, and gross vegetables, they suck. I don't like eating them. How did that go from like I said, like cultivating insane eating disorders in men? Like, why is it necessary to eat a goat's testicle raw? What is up with eating raw organ meat, raw beef? What is the aversion to cooking? Is that also an agent of feminization?
Yeah, I mean, I think the meat thing is really fascinating. One thing we talked a little bit about on our episode on Liver King was how this kind of understanding of different foods being for different genders is just like, it's such an artifact of modernity in itself. Do you know? Previously, kind of households, but before I think like the 1860s, the household all eats together. You don't have time to be kind of like making different food for different people. So it kind of doesn't really make sense. There's no real mention of, men should be eating this and women should be eating that. Then there's, a kind of sort of first wave of kind of women hitting the workforce. And advertisers essentially kind of see an opportunity here that they can, start making special cafes just for the ladies. And what if it was special food just for the ladies as well? So it's like, despite, this kind of understanding that red meat is this kind of primal, archaic kind of masculine thing, it's, artifact of advertising like almost everything else.
Like, did Neolithic men have that much protein in their diet?
I mean, like, it really just depends. Like, it depends on where they were and like, what was available to them. They were like hunter-gatherers, but we were scavengers primarily. We took what we got.
And I do know that Ötzi the Iceman, who was like a preserved cave dude who they found in the hills in a mountain in Italy, they gave him an autopsy and he had arteriosclerosis. He was like 35 years old.
Yeah.
So it's like some of that stuff's bad for you. You got a genetic component there. You're not in charge.
Yeah. My friend took a DNA test and it turned out Ötzi the Iceman was like a direct ancestor for him, which is like quite cool.
Yeah, like Liver King's very funny because it's like he is choosing to eat, completely raw testicles, but he has like a fleet of vehicles. He rides a jet ski. Yeah. He has a private chef who does all this stuff for him. And so the idea is like,
private butcher, not a chef. He's not cooking anything. He's just chopping balls off left and right.
The hidden shit is that he does do all that other stuff. The reality about this guy is he's a multi-level like marketing guy whose entire personality was built by a social media marketing company that he approached before he even launched his social media presence. So he wasn't just doing this and then rose to fame. He was like, how can I package essentially what is going to be nutrition bars and like Alex Jones style shit, really, if you look at it. How can I make this look better? But then like there's even a shot of him, like he does all this like like short form content. And one of them is like he's lifting in the shower. And if you look in the reflection of the shower thing, you can see a sink in his bathroom that's just covered with Budweisers, right? Which is like he's not supposed to be drinking all this
beer
shit.
is for guys too. Beer is for the fellas.
And he is a swollen, I wouldn't even say swole because he is swollen and has been fighting the kind of not natty, claims that he's been have been addressed to him. But it's funny to me that he kind of rose in that place of like, eat naturally and be like your ancestors. Because like he's like, riding a private jet. He does actually eat all this other stuff as well. And he just realized, if I become like the most extreme version of this, it works much, much better for social media. And people have just taken him on face value for that. Like he'll go to MMA fights and eat liver with the MMA guys because it's like his shtick, right? Like it's like, oh, you're strong and you're an MMA guy, but can you eat a bunch of raw liver off a plate? And the answer is no, because it's fucking nasty.
Yeah, they used to do that on Fear Factor. This was not a diet. This was like a challenge to win money on television.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're someone like Liver King, you're just looking at the market right now, and it's so saturated with guys who say you have to eat steak. Like Jordan Peterson was doing that, years ago. So you have to go take it to the next extreme. And, bless Liver King, that's exactly what he does. He just picks like the most disgusting foods to eat on camera, like, kind of raw testicles and stuff like that. And it's partially, I think, just it's a USP thing, He's got essentially challenging the rest of them to kind of catch him up on that and make it boring.
If you think about like his ancestors too, I mean, like you said, Matt, like these people had like crazy deficiencies. They would probably eat like if the gatherers bring in some vegetables or whatever, like you're going to fucking eat the vegetables. But Liver King will set up a whole scene where he has all these raw meats. He'll have a big, nicely made salad in front of him, and he'll open his video by taking the salad and throwing it behind him, like
Fuck
smashing. Yeah, fuck the salad.
Yeah, I mean, your ancestors would be weeping at that. Like,
Yeah,
that
like,
could have fed the whole
wasting-
village.
You're wasting the nice salad.
All right, so moving on from diet and exercise. All right, we alluded to before, but like religion. Like the manosphere's attitude towards religion and like the irony of all of this growing out of a movement that was just about picking up chicks and then morphing into Christianity.